Tell me when I have a chance. Are you on now?
Yes. Yes, dear. She pursed her lips. Whatever that means. Anyway. Yes, I'm going to do another installment of Across the Gulf. Now, I know many of you are probably thinking, what the hell is this about? Because it's like a fantasy, Egyptian fantasy, and it's erotic and sadomasochistic and all wilder. Well, it's telling us kind of more about, kind of where Crowley was coming from at the time, but of what spiritual value is this Across the Gulf story? Well, I'm not going to spend too much time in commentary, but it is the story of Ankh-f-n-Khonsu there. Okay, now that stele of revealing was the talisman, if you will, that triggered the events leading to the equinox of the gods and the supreme invocation of Horus, which in the Thelemic spiritual tradition signaled a massive quantum leap in the potential, anyway, of human consciousness that announced the Aeon of Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris. Moving from the formula of Osiris, which is more or less characterized by the dying God formula, the formula of self-sacrifice. For that, this formula was established at a time when human consciousness was just barely wrapping their mind around the idea that the sun came up every morning and went down at night. And that came out of the Aeon of Isis. Before that, going back into almost prehistoric times in human consciousness, of where we weren't really that cognizant or prepossessed with the idea of the sun coming up and down. We just wanted to fill our bodies. So it's a formula of nourishment, getting nourishment directly from the earth. And that was the Aeon of Isis. Okay. So we've got these three Aeons: Isis, Osiris, and now the new Aeon of Horus. And Crowley saw himself and his personal initiatory ordeals, because we all have our own personal initiatory ordeals. That's what we're here to work our ways through this. But his personal magical initiatory ordeals, as it happened, was synchronized with the events of the establishment of the movement from the Aeon of Osiris to that of Horus. So they were together. It was an as above, so below thing. And when Crowley started to put two and two together, because that stele triggered, was a major event in his initiatory life, he speculated that the main character, whose funeral stele that is, Ankh-f-n-Khonsu, was going through the same kind of spiritual initiatory experience, but at the dawn of the Aeon of Osiris. So just as Crowley Crowley's initiatory career synchronized with the movement up from Osiris to Horus, he speculated that Ankh-f-n-Khonsu was doing the same thing, only moving from the Aeon of Isis to that of Osiris. That being said, now it starts to sort of make sense what's going on in this tale across the Gulf, which is the story of Ankh-f-n-Khonsu. And we've got him going through weird, wild, Terry Southern kind of Terry Gilliam kind of surrealistic story, whereby part of his training as a priest of the princes in Egypt was he started out by being taken to this old hermit that says, bringing him up as a priestess. And his father said, no, but he's a boy. And the old man said, never mind, bring him up as a priestess. And he's a priestess, he's being trained as a priestess of the Veiled One. Now, the Veiled One is Asi, or Isis, okay? And he's telling the tale in a very surreal and fanciful way, as if the gods of Egypt were similar to this new movie, or this relatively new movie called the Gods of Egypt, where the gods, Thoth and Horus and Osiris, are actual, almost physical beings that play almost a political role in the life of the Egyptians. Only the gods are, about 15 feet tall instead of, 6 foot tall and stuff like that. So anyway, he's being brought up as a priestess of Isis, and he has already gone through all sorts of ordeals and things like this. But it is, and he's sort of a bad boy, okay? He sneaks out and does stuff, and he's breaking kind of all the rules, and at the same time gaining success after success after success in his role. And finally, he is growing into the maturity where he can be the main priestess of Isis and be in her presence all along, but as a priestess, okay? So this is starting chapter 4. I think it's our 5th installment here. So it came to pass that I no longer went out at all from the presence of the goddess, save only to eat and to sleep, and the favor of her was restored to the people, so that all men were glad thereof. For if any man murmured, he was slain incontinent. The people being mindful of the famine and of the disease, and being minded to have no more of such, if it could by any means be avoided. So they were exceedingly punctual in their gifts, their oblations to the goddess. Okay. But I was daily more afraid, being in a great sweat of passion, of which I dared to speak to no man, because he has doubts. He knows he's a bad boy. Okay, he's not falling into the party line, but secretly. Okay, and it's blowing his own mind that he's being so successful with the goddess, when kind of he's breaking all the rules and thinking naughty thoughts. Okay. Nor did I dare to speak even privily in mine own heart thereof, lest I should discover its nature. But I sent my favorite, a virgin, Ishtara, slim, pallid, and a trembling as a young lotus in the west wind. I sent her with my ring of office to inquire of the old magus in the well. And he answered her by pointing upward at the sky, then downward to the earth. And I read this oracle as if it were spoken, as above, so below. This came to me as I had flung myself in despair at the feet of my lady, covering them with my tears, for by a certain manifest token I now knew that I had done a thing that was so dreadful that even now, these many thousands of years hence, I dare hardly write. I loved the Veiled One. Now remember, he's a man, dressed as and acting as a priestess, doing really good in his priestessy role, but he loved her. Yea, with a fierce passion of a beast, of a man, of a god, with my whole soul I loved her. Even as I knew this by the manifest token, the veil burst into a devouring flame and ate up the robes of my office, lapping them with its tongues of fire like a tigress lapping blood. Yet withal it burnt me not, nor singed one hair. He got so passionate in his secret love of the goddess, his clothes caught on fire, okay? Thus naked I fled away in fear, and in my madness slipped and fell into the pool of liquid silver, splashing it all over the hall. And even as I fled, that rosy cataract of flame that wrapped me from the veil as it jutted, went out. The flame went out. The veil was a dull web of gold, no more. Remember, he used to get the veil to sparkle. Okay. Then I crept fearfully to the feet of the goddess, and with my tears and kisses sought to wake her into life once more. But the veil flamed not again. Only a mist gathered about it and filled the temple and hid all things from my eyes. Now then came Ishtara, my favorite, back with the ring and the message. And thinking that she brought bad news, I slit her lamb's throat with a magic sickle, and her asp's tongue I tore out with my hands and threw it to the dogs and jackals. Herein I erred sorely, for her news was good. Having reflected thereon, I perceived its import. For since the veil flamed always at my assumption, it was sure that I was in sympathy with that veiled one. Now remember, this is the age of Isis that he's in, and he's the priestess of Isis, and he's in love with Isis, and as above, so below. If I were troubled and knew not why, if my long peace were stirred, why then? So she. As above, so beneath. For even as I, being man, sought to grasp godhood and crush it in my arms, so she, the pure essence, sought to manifest in form by love. Yet I dare not repeat the ceremony at midnight. Yet I dared not repeat the ceremony at midnight. Instead, I lay prone, my arms outstretched in shame and pain on the steps at her feet. And lo, the veil flamed. Then I knew that she, too, blamed herself, alike for her ardor and for her abstinence. Thus 7 days I lay, never stirring, and all the time the veil flamed subtly and softly, a steady blush glow changing to green as my thoughts changed from melancholy to desire. Then on the 8th day I rose and left the shrine and clad myself in new robes, in robes of scarlet and gold, with a crown of vine and bay and laurel and cypress. Also I purified myself and proclaimed a banquet. And I made the priests and the citizens exceedingly drunk. Then I called the guard and purged thoroughly the whole temple of all of them, charging the captain on his life to let no man pass within, so that I should be absolutely alone in the whole precincts of the temple. Then, like an old gray wolf, I wandered around the outer court, lifting up my voice in a mournful howl. And a ululation as of 100,000 wolves answered me, yet deep and muffled, as though it came from the very bowels of the earth. Then at the hour of midnight, I entered again the shrine and performed the ritual. As I went on, I became inflamed with an infinite lust for the infinite, and now I let it leap unchecked like a very lion. Even so the veil glowed red as with some infernal fire. Now, then, I am come to the moment of the Assumption. But instead of sitting calm and cold and remote and aloof, I gathered myself together and spring madly at the veil, catching it with my 2 hands. Now the veil was of woven gold, 3,000 twisted wires, a span thick, and I put out my whole force to tear it across. And for she also put out her force, it rent with the roar of an earthquake. Blinded I was with the glory of her face. I should have fallen, but she caught me to her and fixed her divine mouth on mine, eating me up with the light of her eyes. Her mouth moaned, her throat sobbed with love, her tongue thrust into me as a shaft of sunlight smites into the palm groves. My robes fell shriveled, and flesh to flesh we clung. Then in some strange way she gripped me, body and soul, twining herself about me and within me, even as death that devoureth a mortal man. Still, my being increased, my consciousness expanded until I was all nature, seen as one, felt as one, apprehended as one, formed by me, part of me, apart from me, all these things at one moment. And at the same time, the ecstasy of love grew colossal, a tower to scale the stars, a sea to drown the sun. I could not write of this. But in the streets, people gathered apples of gold that dropped from invisible boughs, and invisible porters poured out wine for all, strange wine that healed disease and old age, wine that poured between the teeth of the dead so long as the embalmer had not begun his work, brought them back from the dark kingdom to perfect health and youth. As for me, I lay as one dead in the arms of the Holy Veiled One, veiled no more. While she shook her pleasure of me 10 times 1,000 times, in that whirlwind of passion, all my strength was as a straw in a simoon. Yet I grew not weaker, but stronger. Though my ribs cracked, I held firm. Presently, indeed, I stirred. It seemed as if her strength had come to me. Thus I forced back her head and thrust myself upon her, even as a comet that impales the sun upon its horn, and my breath came fast between my lips and hers. Her moan, now faint like a dying child, no more like a wild beast in torment. Even so, wild with the lust of conquest, I urged myself upon her and fought against her. I stretched out her arms and forced them to the ground. Then I crossed them on her breast so that she was powerless, and I became like a mighty serpent of flame and wrapped her, crushed her in my coils. I was the master. Then grew a vast sound about me as shouting. I grew conscious of the petty universe, the thing that seems apart from oneself so long as one is oneself apart from it. Men cried, "The temple is on fire! The temple of Asi, the Veiled One, is burning. The mighty temple that gave its glory to Thebai is aflame." Can we see the Aeon changing here? Oh, I digress. Excuse me. Then I loosed my coils and gathered myself into the form of a mighty hawk of gold and spake one last word to her, a word to raise her from the dead. But lo, not a sea, but a Sar, Osiris. White was his garment, starred with red and blue and yellow. Green was his countenance, and in his hands he bore the crook and scourge. Thus he rose, even as the temple fell about us in ruins, and we were left standing there. And I wist not what to say. Now then, the people of the city crowded in upon us, and for the most part would have slain me. But Thoth, the mighty god, the wise one, with his ibis head and his nemes of indigo, with his apept crown and his phoenix wand, and with his ankh of emerald, and his magic apron in the 3 colors. Yea, Thoth, the god of wisdom, whose skin is of tawny gold as though it burned in a furnace, appeared visibly to all of us. And the old magus of the well, whom no man had seen outside his well for nigh 80 years, was found in the midst. And he cried aloud with a loud voice, saying, "The equinox of the gods." And he went on to explain how it was how that nature should no longer be the center of man's worship, but man himself. Man in his suffering and death, man in his purification and perfection. And he recited the formula of Osiris as follows, and it has been transmitted unto us by the brethren of the cross and the rose unto this day. And here it is. For Asar-un-Nefer hath said, he that is found perfect before the gods hath said, these are the elements of my body, perfected through suffering, glorified through trial. For the scent of the dying rose is the repressed sigh of my suffering. The flame-red fire is the energy of my undaunted will. The cup of wine is the outpouring of the blood of my heart sacrificed to regeneration. And the bread and salt are the foundations of my body, which I destroy in order that they may be renewed. For I am Asar, triumphant, even Asar-un-Nefer, the justified one. I am he who is clothed with the body of flesh, yet in whom is the spirit of the mighty gods. I am Lord of life, triumphant over death. He who partaketh with me shall arise with me. I am the manifester of matter, of whose abode is the invisible. I am purified. I stand upon the universe. I am its reconciler with the eternal gods. I am the perfecter of matter, and without me the universe is not. All this he said, and displayed the sacraments of Osiris before all of them, and in a certain mystical manner did we all symbolically partake of them. But for me, the scent of the dying rose, I beheld rather the perfection of the love of my lady, the veiled one, whom I had won and slain in the winning. Now, I digress. That's the moment when Ankh-f-n-Khonsu changed or consummated the equinox of the gods, moving from the Aeon of Isis to Osiris. Now, however, the old magus clad me, for I was yet naked, in the dress of a priest of Osiris. He gave me the robes of white linen and the leopard skin, and the wand and ankh. Also he gave me the crook and scourge, and girt me with the royal girdle. On my head he set the holy Uraeus serpent for a crown, and then, turning to the people, cried aloud, Behold the priest of Asar in Thebai. He shall proclaim unto ye the worship of Asar. See that ye follow him. Then, ere one could cry, Hold, he'd vanished from our sight. I dismissed the people. I was alone with the dead god, with Osiris, with the Lord of Amenti, the slain of Typhon, the devourer of Apophis. Yea, verily, I was alone. Now, I have to confess that until I reached this chapter, I pretty much didn't know what the fuck was going on in this story. And now it becomes pretty clear to me. And Crowley is telling this tale from the vantage point of his own experience in ushering in the Aeon of Horus. Is it any wonder it's a curious tale? Anyway, I've gone way over my time today. Who knows what tomorrow will bring, but if you want to read across the gulf. Just Google it, and you can find it in sacred writings, and so you can study it in greater depth than my morning ramblings. Anyway, until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.